All right. On the road again here in Denver for ETH Denver this week. We've got all of our advisors out here. We'll let everybody kind of filter in. Doing this a little early, well, a little earlier than I normally do. I don't know if you guys like this time or not, but hopefully people will be able to listen to it. I know there's a lot of people that are on the East Coast that it's real late for them when I normally do my lives. So maybe this will be a little easier for people to get access to it and watch it real time instead of the next day after they wake up. Like I said, we're over here at ETH Denver. Got our full team out here for an on-site. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. We'll be speaking Friday. We're also at the XRP community event with Ray Fuentes. He's going to be hosting that on Thursday evening. So if you are surrounding Denver, if you're a couple hours out, I think that'll be a really good event. He's got some other good speakers there. We're sponsoring that. So excited to see Ray. Love you mucho. I don't know if he's going to be giving out hoodies or not, but I hope he is. I think there'll be a lot of people that would pick up merch if he's got that going. A lot of things happening out there. We went over a lot of this stuff in the Discord a little bit earlier today. We do the digital asset discussion every single Monday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time over there in that community. If that sounds like something you want, maybe you can't come in at this time and you want some more exclusive stuff, we talk about a lot of stuff there. We do run down a lot of questions for the community every Monday at that time. It's only about a 30-minute time slot though. Those are all recorded. People can listen back to them later, but a lot of good stuff. So some of the stuff we touched on there, I made a post on Twitter earlier today. I don't have any price predictions. I don't have any time frames. I will say that the post was a bit ambiguous, but about Easter this year, actually the Friday before Easter is when Patrick Witt said, not me, Patrick Witt, who is the guy that is at the White House on cryptocurrency, that he's hopeful that the Clarity Act would pass by that date. So that gives us about 48 days here until Easter, and that should be passed. And I still, there's a lot of people that would disagree with me on this, even people that I have good relationships with and are, my business partner, Max, he doesn't think that there's going to be price appreciation on XRP before the Clarity Act. I think that there is going to be. And I think that they're going to have to split that bill. Again, there's just a lot of things in there that the Democrats oppose when it comes to the regulations around DeFi. They want permissioned ecosystems and some oversight and regulatory oversight and accountability. I kind of agree with a lot of the points that they brought up, to be honest with you. I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, we're a wealth manager. We have about, not quite $1 billion under management anymore because the price it was, but about 400 million XRP under management over there at Digital Wealth Partners. And so, I'm kind of in favor of some regulatory oversight. I think you need some accountability. The way that I think the lending protocol in the XRPL will work is there's going to be 4 people involved, right? And I think this is probably similar to how it's going to work on a lot of the DeFi stuff. You've got a borrower and a lender. So somebody wants to put up, whatever it is, whatever the issued asset is, or XRP, and then the other person gets whatever it is on the transaction. So if you want to borrow RLUSD against XRP, you've got those 2 parties that are willing to contribute to the pool and earn an interest rate, and somebody's willing to pay that interest rate to be able to get that loan. You probably need a broker. And for over-collateralized loans, that's how DeFi has worked a lot up to this point, is you put your stuff in there, it gets lent out, or you're borrowing against your stuff and it's over collateralized and you get the stable coin, whatever it is. If you want traditional loans done through this protocol, and I think people will want that, I think banks and institutions will be looking to use this. You're probably going to need a broker that sits in there, somebody that has oversight, that underwrites the risk, that understands the constraints around the loans and can be a neutral third party between the 2 people that are transacting. And then you'll probably have to have an arbiter if there is, litigation, or somebody sues somebody, or, things don't work out the way that they were supposed to. The broker and the borrower are going to have to be the people that sign off, or the lender are going to have to be the people that sign off when the loan's repaid to be able to release the collateral. And if they're not for whatever reason, because the loan wasn't paid off, then there's going to be arbitration, and you probably need somebody with, visibility of that ecosystem to make sure that they're making the right determination based on the information that's actually there that happened on chain. So I think it'll work similar to some of these other DeFi ecosystems. You're probably going to have oversight or purview by a regulator. So it'd be kind of like the arbiter. So like if it is, uh-oh, my TikTok messed up for whatever reason. That was weird. It kicked me out of there. Resume. If people are participating and the regulator needs visibility into that ecosystem, I would think that they would be, have visibility and credibility and all the other reasons that you would need that. And you probably have somebody like an RIA or a broker dealer or somebody else administering that ecosystem, underwriting the risk, understanding what's going on, trying to make sure that there aren't bad actors. And if there are, they can get the regulator involved, that type of stuff. So I think that there's going to be, again, 3 to 5 parties involved in a lot of these DeFi ecosystems. And that's really kind of how I think it probably should be run. But as of it today, you have normally a centralized third party that's issuing the loan. So there's not anybody underwriting the risk. There's, a code that's been developed, and there's, somebody making money off of it on the back end. And if you don't get really any kind of grace period, that's why we work with people that, do a tri-party agreement with us and Digital Wealth Partners to be able to get a loan against your Bitcoin or your ETH or your Solana, whatever you want to post as collateral. We have good partners that can generate RLUSD or USDC or, whatever you want, or cash if you want it wired to your bank account. All those things are good, right? But if there's a huge liquidation in the market, like we've seen over the past little while here, we did unfortunately have a couple of people that couldn't meet the capital calls in this last liquidation, but on 10/10, when it rebounded very quickly, we had no issues, whereas a lot of other people that were leveraged immediately got liquidated. There's no grace period if you're just participating in a DeFi protocol without these additional benefits, right? And I think people want both. I think people want some grace. You still want, insurance. You still want the assurances that you're going to get from TradFi, but at the same time, you want the efficiencies and the benefits that you're going to get from DeFi. And I think that the legislation will get there, but I think it's going to take a while. I think they're going to have to strip that piece out of the Clarity Act and kind of define what are commodities, what are currencies, what are securities. Is there a safe harbor period for something to go from a securities offering over to a commodity? How decentralized does the network need to be, if that's the parameter at all? I mean, Brad Garlinghouse has talked about that really doesn't make sense as the parameter. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm just, looking at things and, talking about what I think. That's probably a good time for my disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I like XRP. I invest in XRP. We built our business around that for the majority of it. We're launching a Bitcoin product. I'm going to be at Bitcoin Las Vegas this year. We worked with Fidelity to be able to launch that and democratize access to it. We're going to continue to bring, innovative products to market, but I can't tell you what to invest in. I'm just one guy on the internet that talks about stuff. And you should be watching a lot of different people, and then also speaking with a financial advisor or a CPA or an attorney before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. So again, take it with a grain of salt. My opinions are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. And I try to be candid with you guys and share things on here. But I have to give my disclaimers on my attorneys and everything, because of the regulated space that we're in. So anyway, kind of back to the macro, we do have a very large naval tanker. I don't know if it's called a tanker, naval ship moving into the Gulf of Oman right now. I do believe that Iran is going to see this as an escalation. They are running drills in the Strait of Hormuz right now, or were just yesterday. Maybe it's time. We'll see. It sure would be nice. And again, I said this in the mastermind earlier today, but I don't wish collateral damage on anybody. I'm not looking for an escalation to World War III. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I'm not looking for any of that. I would just like them to be like, hey, look, this is starting to escalate. Let's just shut down the Strait of Hormuz until we work this out type thing. And that would be enough for me. And then they work it out in a few days, right? But that alone would cause oil to spike in yen. It would cause a cascade, the reverse carry trade would unwind, and we would have all of the catalysts play out that I've been talking about for almost 2 years. I feel like Michael Burry at this point, he was calling for the great financial crisis and, the housing market to collapse for 2 years before it actually happened. And he was way down. Like he had created options against the housing market that banks were willing to sell them because they were like, yeah, that's not going to collapse. Good luck, dude. And he ended up making billions of dollars for his investors while they hated him pretty much the whole time. They thought he was crazy. They thought that, he was going to lose all their money. They had lockup periods. They were trying to pull their money out because all they saw was the money going down. And that's how I think a lot of people feel right now in XRP. Like, you've bought into this, you understand the utility, how it's going to be used, all those things, but the price is down significantly from where it was. And until we have these catalysts play out and all these things happen, it's going to continue to trend with Bitcoin, right? The sentiment in the market is now at an all-time low, while fundamentals are at an all-time high. It's like, if you're buying the right cryptos right now, the ones that you've done research on, again, talk to your financial advisor, all that stuff. This is an opportunity like we saw in 2001, really, like after the dot-com bubble blew up. Fundamentals were at an all-time high. Amazon was trading at $4 to $6. Imagine buying Amazon in 2001 at $4 to $6, and understanding that they were just trading at $100, or 96 is I think what their high was before they collapsed all the way down to $4 to $6. Bezos, if you listen to him talk about it, he was like, I'm seeing our share price collapse and fundamentals and the business is doing better than it's ever done. That's how I feel about crypto right now. Like, you have institutions leaning in, you have clarity right here on the precipice of being passed, you have real world applications go live in the very near future. I'm hopeful that we see something here Wednesday this week. We'll have permission dexes go live for the XRPL, and that will allow digital identity, credentials, permission domains, all of those, which is what the banks need to be able to operate in permissioned ecosystems, because you have to have certain credentials to even see or participate in whatever capacity in these on-chain environments. That's what they want. They want siloed permissioned ecosystems in an open, decentralized network to be able to participate, pass payments back and forth between one another, audit them, do all the stuff that they need to. And this is the last piece of that puzzle here this Wednesday for that to actually be viable and for them to start actually utilizing XRP in those transactions. Up until this point, Ripple's had ODL as a product, but really what they do is they use that as a loan to the bank that needs the collateral or the money, whatever it is. Uphold will swap it for whatever fiat currency the bank wants. They hold the XRP, they issue the loan, the bank uses it for 7 days, they pay it back with interest, they swap it back for XRP, and they pay it back to Ripple. So in that scenario, for Ripple to aggregate more XRP, it would work in their benefit if the price was continuing down, right? So if every 7 days they were making a loan, so let's say they, loaned the XRP at $2, the bank borrows it at $2, they get the fiat. They're going to do whatever they want with it. They pay it back at 1% for the week or whatever, however many basis points. They give it back to Uphold. The price is down on XRP. When they buy more XRP, Ripple gets more XRP back. Again, not here to paint. I don't think Ripple's a bad guy. I think they have a business to run. I think that things work in their favor frequently, which is great if you own Ripple equity and you believe in the long-term use case for XRP, because obviously it's at the core of what they want to do. The more XRP that they have control and can use and put to work at a high price, the better off we're all going to be, right? I think that they've been a really good steward of the asset. They were gifted 80% by OpenCoin back in the day. And so all that being said, I think we're close here. It seems like things could play out in the imminent future over there with Iran, but until the macro happens, I'm not holding my breath. We're 47 days into this year. We'll just see how much longer it takes. But I do feel like XRP is going to move before the Clarity Act actually does get passed, just with all the headwinds that it currently has out there. And again, Patrick Witt stating he thinks that it's going to be early April when we finally see that get across the line. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me, ask great questions, listen in. For those that listen back to this later, thank you for doing so. If you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share, and it helps the channel grow, helps the algorithm, gets it out to more people. We're at 191,000 subscribers on YouTube, which again, like none of that's possible without you guys. I'm super humbled and blessed on that. Never would have thought. Like you have aspirations for things, but I never would have thought that this many people would care what I have to say. So thank you for watching, subscribing, and all the support. All right. 7U says, can our returns from DWP and XRP be an XRP so we don't have to sell? Also, do you have any hopium? Thank you, and God bless you and your family. So I can talk about two products that we have at Digital Wealth Partners. I cannot talk about the other products that we have at Digital Wealth Partners. I can only talk about the returns on those two products. I cannot talk about the returns on the other products. It's not because I don't want to talk about them. It's because I legally can't talk about them. So the two products that we have that I can talk about are the income fund and the growth fund. These are the original ones. There may have been some other stuff later on again, but those are the two I can talk about. So one of those produces income on a quarterly basis. We have paid dividends out of that fund to LPs. They get a cash return on a quarterly basis. If there aren't any cash returns for that period because the way that it's invested underperforms, then there's no guarantees of returns on any of these. We run them in real strategies, and there's risk associated with the investments, and that's why both of them require accredited investors to be able to participate. So on the income fund, it's cash. You could use that cash to buy more XRP, but to your point, you are going to have tax implications for that distribution that you're going to receive on a quarterly basis. The growth fund, however, continues to compound your XRP while it's in there. If you take XRP back out of the growth fund, the contribution, putting it in and taking out, are not taxable up to the amount that you put in. Okay. So let's say you put in 100 XRP. The minimum is much higher than that, but we're just going to use that for easy math. Okay. And over the next 3 to 5 years, you double your position in XRP. That's not completely unreasonable. It could absolutely happen if the strategies perform well. And so in 3 to 5 years, you have 200 XRP in the fund. You could redeem the first 100 XRP with no tax implications and leave the other 100 in there to continue to compound. It's basically interest, right, that you've earned during that period. But as long as you're not redeeming that interest, it's not a taxable event. We want to work this out, over the next 3 to 5 years, probably sooner, ideally sooner, where we tokenize the funds. And if we're able to tokenize the funds, it would be an issued asset on the XRPL. And then you might be able to take that over the borrow-lend protocol and get a loan against your position in the fund. You would be liquid, right? And then you can allow that to continue to compound and grow over time without having any tax implications. We want to create all the solutions to be as tax efficient as possible. But people do want income in cash off of their XRP. And so we've created a product for that. The yield product that we're going to be bringing to market, simply, it produces a monthly return. And it's very low. And it's as close to guaranteed as you could get. Everything has risk. It's as close to guaranteed as you could get. It'd be kind of like a DeFi deal, okay? That will also be paid in cash. It will be income, taxable income on those distributions. If we ever get staking on the XRPL, the way that the tax laws are written today, you would be able to, you have to have dominion and control over the wallet that the payouts are coming to for it to be a taxable event. Because of the way we're structured at Digital Wealth Partners and some multi-sig on the wallet, and Anchorage has dominion, you wouldn't have dominion or full control. And that scares some people, right? We do, like, you tell us what you want to do. If you want to redeem at any time, we send it back to you. It's the client's wishes for the most part. We're an advisor. We do have discretion, and you sign that in there, and that's for a lot of different reasons. But in this case, it's a huge benefit. And that's kind of the give and take on a lot of this stuff. Like when you structure your estate and you set up a trust, you're probably, if you do an irrevocable trust, you're going to have a distribution trustee, you're going to have a trust protector, and that's what allows you the creditor protection from stuff also. So anytime you want these additional benefits, you're probably going to have to give something up. It's not for everybody, right? I want to be very clear about that. The way that we structure things is just how you would do it with any other wealth manager. They have discretion. If it's 2 a.m. and the market tanks or explodes and you have a buy order in, or you told them you wanted to buy or sell at a certain price, they need to be the ability to execute on that. And again, it's documented. Anyway, all that being said, with in-kind returns, dominion and control, or the current tax implications of the way this is structured, you wouldn't have either of those. And so therefore, we believe that any staking returns that are held at Anchorage in our accounts for the clients on your behalf for the benefit of, it's not taxable until you take it out. When you took it out, then it would be, but any in-kind returns back to your wallet inside that infrastructure in the format that we have it would not be a taxable event. So if you want to stake Solana, you have Solana with us over there at Anchorage, you get staking returns, not taxable under our tax letters in the way that we've written it with our CPAs and the advisory that we have. I'm sure there'll be case law, and I'm sure that there'll be Congress and all the stuff that comes along. But we, again, tax minded. We want to mitigate taxes any chance we get. We want to structure things the right way, and that's why we've structured the funds the way that we have, and we're bringing these other products to market the way that we are, to be able to provide the most benefit and upside with the least amount of cost to the client. Let's see here. We've got the key 70. They say, "Hey Jake C from Jake in the UK. It's midnight here." Hey, okay, it's a little bit better time for you. Thanks for staying up. As a DWP client, I'm looking forward to XRP yield and was hoping to get a time frame and deadlines. You and me both, my man. We've been working on that for close to 8 months at this point. It has been a beating. It's just taken a lot longer than I would have liked for it to get to market. I've got a verbal agreement. I don't have a written deal. So as soon as we have that and we sign it, we've built a lot of the infrastructure. We have all the agreements. We've done everything on the legal side. We've done everything that we can up to this point to be able to get it to market almost immediately after we have the signature and the partnership across the line. But until that is, signed on the dotted line and things are ready to move, I would love to say tomorrow, but that would be an untruth. So until I have a direct timeline and we know for sure, I don't want to get out here and promise you guys anything. I'm excited about it. I want to talk about it. And I know we're going to get it to market. We're going to be first before anybody else. It's just, again, my hands are tied and I don't have full control over the situation. And so until, other parties are capable of moving and willing to sign, we're kind of stuck in limbo. Charity Safaris says, "Hello, Jake. I'm Carbon 2 member. Awesome. Glad to see you and have bought the LLC package. I'm considering opening an account with your digital asset custody. How do I know Anchorage Capital is secure for my portfolio?" Well, we can give you the full breakdown of the security on the back end of it, but I'll kind of give you a high level here. Would actually love to get Ben Hearn or Joe Medioli from over there to come talk with us on a deal for the Mastermind. We've got something scheduled in the near future for that, and they'll be able to give you a deep, in-depth analysis, but I'm going to do my best for a high level. They use copper, but it's a derivative of copper that utilizes HSMs. So copper and Fireblocks both use MPC technology. I forget what MPC stands for, but it's kind of like cloud stuff. HSMs are hardware security modules. So these are actual physical infrastructure, and that's what you have to have in order to be FIPS compliant here in the US. So any large institution that's using electronics transfer, they have to have HSMs. And what they do is they create a wallet address for you. Nobody ever sees those keys. They're created through an algorithm. They're held on the back end. They are encrypted and then sharded, and then those shards are held across HSMs globally. When you want to execute a transaction on chain to send the asset somewhere else, they'll whitelist a wallet for you. So if you want to send it back to your cold storage wallet, that's the only place that you can send it. You'll ask to withdraw. We say, cool. It can take up to 24 hours to withdraw the assets. Look, again, friction sometimes is good, sometimes is bad. If there is somebody else that's trying to do that, we're able to catch it within that period of time. Oftentimes it will happen much faster than that, but that's their SLA is 24 hours. Okay. When I worked with standard custody, that was also their SLA. Now, when it was standard custody, I never had a withdrawal take more than like an hour because they had a bunch of algorithmic stuff that Arthur Brito had designed on the back end. It was awesome. Anchorage is a little bit more. They were a New York chartered bank. They're an OCC regulated federally chartered bank. And so it's super secure. There's some delays and frictions and timeframes. Again, oftentimes to your benefit. If you're trying to move fast on stuff, I understand why it can be a problem, especially if you're used to working in crypto and everything settles real time and it's not an issue. We do it as fast as we can while verifying that it's you and making sure that everything's kosher and it's not a problem. Anyway, so that's the technology that they use. That's how the key is distributed and logged on the back end. The key actually never all the way comes back together when they pull it back together. It says quantum resistant as any technology that I've seen out there. And BlackRock holds their assets there. So if you are BlackRock, you have the ability to really hold your assets wherever you want, right? Like you're in the arena. And so for them to hold it at Anchorage, that gives me the warm and fuzzy to hold my assets there. I'm not worried about them being hacked or taken or any of that. And also the account's insured up to $100 million by Lloyd's of London. They use Marsh as their broker. So if you want to go look all that stuff up, they've sent us the policies, we reviewed them. There's been a lot of legal back and forth with us and Anchorage over the past. We started onboarding assets in October of 24. So we started the legal process with them back in like June of 24. And we've become very familiar with everything over there and the intricacies and all that stuff. And again, a lot of friction, but they are a OCC chartered, federally chartered bank, and rightly so, right? So again, kind of a give and take on some of this stuff. I know, like I said before, not for everybody. We have a lot of our clients hold some assets. So kind of like your long-term bag that you plan to, use to generate income and grow over the long term. They put it Anchorage, and then they'll keep some on an exchange or on their cold wallet. Out of that, that also lowers their AUM fees, right? If we're not managing all of your assets, you would pay less. And that's probably a good time to mention this. So for the next 14, well, this month only has 28 days. So the next 12 days, if you already have an LLC, you can onboard with Digital Wealth Partners for $900. So it's normally $1,000. We've taken $100 off. And you already have to have an LLC. So if you want to go set up an LLC, you'll get the discount on the other side. You can use the code onboard, all capitalized, 100, and it gets you $100 off the onboarding over there. And you don't have to fund your account immediately. Okay. So we know some people are like, I don't want to, pay the fees until I can cover them with the yield product, which we completely understand. So if you want to be proactive and you want to go ahead and set that up, you've already set up an LLC, you're going to onboard your assets over there. You're going to get there eventually anyway. You want to beat the crowd because as soon as we announce the yield product, I can guarantee you it's going to be gangbusters. There's going to be people that want to onboard with us. And I don't say that facetiously or like, biggity or with the ego. I want it. Like I'm excited about it. And so I think other people will be too. I could be wrong about that, but I think that they will be. So if you want to be proactive, if you've already set up an LLC or you're doing one right now, you can use the code onboard100 to get you $100 off the onboarding over there with Digital Wealth Partners. You just go to digitalwealthpartners.net, fill out the contact us form, and our team will reach out to you. All right. Oh, we just went over this one. Sorry. Scrolling on down. We got Carlos, my man. He says, Jake, glad to see you in Colorado. I'll see you Thursday. Get a lift in this week. Dude, I have been slacking on the gym here recently. With so much travel and everything, I got in there and had a lift the other morning. But, I mean, I'm holding up okay. But, like, I need to get back on my game, especially if we're going to, Las Vegas for Bitcoin Vegas. Got to be looking good at the pool. And I've only got 3 months to get in shape here. So need to get on it. Chris Burns says, what's the story if you know about Rosie Rios no longer being on the board of Ripple? I wasn't aware of that. She is the previous treasurer of, before Yellen. And her name's on like $1.7 trillion globally. She didn't sign all those bills, but she signed the stamp thing that stamps the bills, right? So, she got on the board of Ripple during the lawsuit, which told me a lot about, the viability in the long term for Ripple. Maybe whatever she was doing there. I mean, I know she was working on the digitization of money. We just saw her on New Year's. She was talking about the ball drop on July 4th this year. They're going to be using the same 2026 ball drop that they had in New York on the 250th anniversary of the U.S. this year. So I haven't heard that she's left the board. That's news to me. I will have to go look it up and see. We had Caroline, who worked with Ripple, and now Ripple's on some governing council for the CFTC and the digital asset component of that. She moved on from being the head of CFTC over there to MoonPay. You have a lot of people, government officials, that move from the private to public sector because of their experience with certain regulatory bodies, and that provides them I want to say it's a good old boys club. What happened over here on YouTube? Oh, there it goes. Okay, it's kind of a good old boys club on stuff, and if you know people and you have a relationship, you get things done better, and they're also going to know why other people got in trouble, right? So they can advise you and make sure that if you're doing something new and innovative, that you're doing it the right way, the way that the regulator would want it done. So I think that they have a unique opportunity in the market. I'm sure, if she moved on from the board of Ripple, on the board of some other companies that are also doing really cool, more regulated stuff that might involve something with the Treasury. Honest Aim, good to see you. They say, Mr. Legacy, hi to the tea lady. Thanks for all that you do. Go oil. Rooting for the next amendment to come online. Will this help the adoption of XRP and any other amendments that are a focus on institutional side? Thank you for that. Thank you for the support. You guys have been awesome. Good to know you guys. So when it comes to oil, we have seen a little uptick here, but I think that that's going to escalate quickly if there is conflict in the Middle East or the straight down. I do think that that's still going to be the catalyst. And that will, again, inevitably unwind everything else that we've been talking about. The amendment coming online right now is pretty interesting. And I talked about this in the Mastermind earlier today too. When I first put out the domino theory, I thought that they could just ram everything through at one time. I think there's too much risk with that. And that's why we've seen kind of the slow rollout of everything that we've seen. So we saw, the stablecoin bill get across the line last year, the Genius Act. People have had time to get accustomed to that and position themselves to be able to issue stablecoins and figure out what that's going to look like. You had the ETFs roll out and eat supply off the market to be able to dwindle it down. You haven't seen the BlackRock ETF yet, which I do believe is coming, and it will be timed very appropriately in order to be able to drive the price to where it needs to go. But again, it's been a progression of things. And for these amendments to be coming out right now, I don't know if it's going to be okay. We get it across the line, we give it a couple weeks and make sure it's kosher, maybe a little bit longer than that. Do we need to push any fixes, make sure this works right before we actually start pushing volumes of money through it? XRP's price is going to have to be substantially higher before they can actually start transacting value on the network and routing it through XRP. You can settle with other things on the network. Whatever the most liquid thing is what the DEX is going to use to be able to settle that value. Obviously, that's more efficient. The more liquidity that XRP has, it's the native asset on chain. And so, through supply and demand dynamics, they're going to have to push it to a high price if they're really going to want to use it at scale, which is what Monica Long said on Community Day. Just last week, she said that, when she was asked where does she see the XRPL and XRP here in 2026, she said the words that come to mind are institutional adoption at scale. So for that to happen at scale, XRP has to be a high price, has to be a high stable price. And then you had a kind of a follow-on from David Schwartz later in the evening, where he talked about the volatility of the asset and why institutions don't really want to hold that on their balance sheet. It needs to be a high, stable price before these institutions are really going to adopt this. And again, I believe that that's going to happen from, the supply and demand dynamics that are going to push it there, and then payments starting to move over the network to be able to hold price stability at that much higher level. Now, when it comes to other amendments, the other one that I'm watching, I'm watching, liquidity pools. I'm watching borrow lend. I'm also watching batch payments. We haven't seen batch payments get the vote that it needs. It needs one more vote to be passed, and then we'll wait for the 2-week time frame for that. So that's another big one for payments at scale on the XRPL. You probably need batch payments unless we have, an implicit or explicit subnet, which Bob Way has a patent on for the XRPL that they could use to be able to facilitate payments at a much higher TPS than what is currently available on the network. About 1,500 TPS is kind of the high end before where it starts to have problems. You have to use payment channels, trust lines, and an implicit or explicit subnet for it to be able to scale along with the side chains, right? So you have all these different avenues to be able to push volume on the network. And again, none of this is my information. I'm not this smart. Okay. So this is me talking to Matt Hamilton, David Schwartz, other developers, people from Bank of America and some other large institutions. That's where I got this information from. So again, I am not a coder. I did not help build the XRPL. I have very limited knowledge about it. I listen to people that are smarter than me and then try to understand how they're going to use it, what actually needs to be in place for them to facilitate hundreds of thousands of, transactions per second. Because really at scale for MasterCard and Visa, they're going to have to. MasterCard and Visa today both process around 30,000 TPS using their current systems. That's a lot, 30,000 transactions per second. To move on to the XRPL, you need something that's going to have to scale far beyond 1,500 TPS. Which I think I think they have the solutions for this, and they've put together a plethora of ways for value to move and continue to expand as liquidity moves into XRP, and we get the adoption that we're hoping for. XRP Rippler says, if the reverse carry trade unwinds and XRP bottoms at 20 cents just before it goes parabolic, will all the exchanges freeze up? Yeah. I think there's going to be a liquidity crisis. Could it come from, Tether being sanctioned? Could it come from Tether depegging? Those are really the only two things that I think could really cause it. I don't know that it'll depeg. I think that them having gold and Bitcoin on their balance sheet could cause issues. But if there was a reason for the U.S. government to sanction a protocol, we've already seen them do it. We already saw them do that with Tornado Cash, and they could absolutely do it again with Tether. They're operating offshore. They now have a U.S. compliant stablecoin that they've launched with USAT. Maybe they know that USDT is going to get sanctioned and they don't want to be siloed in that. They've diversified into gold. They've done some other stuff. And again, the sanction thing didn't come from me. This was actually a conversation that I had with Ryan. I can't think of Ryan's last name. He's a developer at Ripple, and Scams, the guy that I had the bet with at the end of last year. I went back and forth with him on Twitter a little bit, and it was Ryan from Ripple that actually brought up the fact that the U.S. government could sanction Tether. And Scams normally has kind of made me feel good about it. If it gets tied to Epstein, if it gets tied to something else that's, you'll see me. You're still saying YouTube's frozen over here on TikTok? How about now, brown cow? Well, yes. Oh, it says we're good. Man. Yeah, so when it comes to freezing the exchanges, I think if Tether has either one of those, probably go illiquid. Where the market is right now, I kind of think a pretty decent buying opportunity to me. But again, I'm just one person. You probably shouldn't listen to me. Jonathan, he says, may God bless you and yours, Jake. Thank you. God bless you guys. No question. Just saw Iran is arming islands that are considered gray area in the Strait, ready to boil. I'm with you. I'm feeling like things could escalate here. I'm hoping, again, I don't want any collateral damage. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But if they were to shut the Strait down, that sure would be exactly what I've been talking about for a long time. Scott Howell says, how crazy would it be for this to unfold during ETH Denver? Ultimate flex for XRP. See you Thursday. I'm with you, dude. If you want to put your tinfoil hat on before I get to DFW, Mike, tinfoil hat. There's a lot of riddles and all this other crazy stuff out here. One of the accounts, Mr. Poole, that stopped posting. He stopped posting years ago. He posted a lot about the Denver airport. I don't know if that means that there's an underground thing here. I don't know what it means. Interesting timing if it were to play out this week, just like Scott said. We'll see. Sure would be fun for the XRP meetup this week if it was the case. DFW Mike says, early evening, Mr. Claver. Another awesome meeting on the books. Shout out to the Mastermind member, Sonny, allowing us to use of his business. Awesome conversations across the board. Honest leads us down paths like Gandalf the Grey. Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about Honest Aim. Yeah. I'm excited. We've had these little communities built, from the Mastermind. A lot of people are setting up their own events and getting people together to have conversations, go break bread, have dinner, go do fun stuff together. That's what we want to cultivate. We want people to have a sense of community. You want to find good people around you before price appreciation happens that you can hang out with and do cool stuff with. We got 16,000 people there in the Mastermind, and it's global. So if that sounds like something cool that you would want to be a part of, again, we have the meetup here this week. We got another one next month on St. Patty's Day over there in Nashville. It's mind blowing to me to see all the cool people come together that have aligned interest and better one another. So if you want to go check it out, it is Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the Mastermind. You can just go to .com and use that code, and that gets you, again, the first month for $2. Try it out. If you don't like it, month to month, no contract, leave it anytime. But for 16,000 people to stay there on a regular basis, hopefully that tells you something about, the price for the value. All right. We did that one for DFW Mike. We'll roll on here. We got Jason. He says, were permission DEX the final institutional unlock that turns Japan to carry trade pain into XRPL adoption and rocket fuel? It very well could be. Like I said, it's the final piece that we really need for institutional payment flows to start moving through, Ripple's products over the mainnet over there. And that's just less than 48 hours away. We're should be like 4 o'clock on Wednesday is when that'll get instated. And I'm looking forward to it. We'll see and have an immediate deal from any of these other ones. So I'm not expecting anything immediate, but it sure would be interesting if price rose quickly, based on all these other catalysts to be able to meet demand, to be able to start using it once they could. We'll see. Snail says, can I pay you 1 XRP to set up my LLC and trust since it will be worth a lot in the near future? I'm way too broke and don't have cash right now, but would be willing to depart with one future $10,000 coin. Unfortunately, we have hard costs today that are nominated that don't allow us to be able to facilitate that. And I want you to keep all your XRP. And it's unlikely that you really need an LLC right now. If you're in that situation, I would probably just hold the XRP and wait till price appreciation. If you don't don't have $50,000 to $80,000 in total portfolio value, probably can wait and be just fine to set up an LLC and trust and all this other stuff. I appreciate people wanting to be proactive, but I would rather people, have a larger position and do better in their investments than pay us. We're going to be here. We're going to be here on the other side of the horizon. We're going to be able to help tens of thousands of people make sure that they're structured the right way, protect their assets, grow their wealth, protect it for the next generation, structure things to be able to mitigate taxes and prevent creditors and do all the stuff that we talk about, right? And if you have the luxury to be able to afford to be able to do that now, we want to help the little guy, right? Like, nope, I didn't have any help. I had to figure it out on my own. I think a lot of my stuff I got lucky on, and I was smart enough to just kind of work my way through it and find the right people to help me. And we've productized that. We've created an end-to-end solution for people. So if you do want to work with us, we're here. You're also educated. You know the right questions to be able to ask these other advisors if you don't necessarily want to work with us. And also, I don't think we're going to be able to serve everybody. Like, we already have 3,000 clients on the digital wealth partner side. We got probably 8,000 LLCs up. We've done hundreds of trusts for people at this point. But at scale, I was doing the numbers the other day. There's probably 250,000 people that have more than 10,000 XRP. That's a lot of people, like a lot of people. And we're going to be able to help as many people as we can. We're trying to streamline systems and structure things the right way and hire enough people and do everything so that we can do it at scale. But I'm not naive enough to think that we're going to get everybody, nor do I think everybody should work with us. We're not the best fit for everyone, right? But at least educated enough to be able to go to these other advisors and have conversations and ask them questions, or maybe educate them so that they can help you. That was a lot of what I did with my advisors. They knew enough, right? Like, they'd worked with Bitcoin, ETH, and some other stuff. And I was like, I got this XRP thing, and I think it's the one. And they listened to me, and I helped structure everything and helped them with language and a bunch of stuff. And I got to learn a lot along the way, which was really cool. And so now we help other people do that. But anyway, back to the point here. I would rather you keep your XRP than pay us. And when the time's right, if you want to work with us, we will be. And again, appreciate the support and you wanting to be proactive. We got Dan S. He says, Jake, legend lifter of heavyweights. No question. Just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge. Beyond Broke Mastermind member. God bless. God bless you, dude. Thank you for the kind words and being part of the community. I don't know on the weightlifting thing. And thank you for the kind words on, the compliment. When I was younger, sure. I would say I lifted some heavy weights. I picked things up and put them down. And I would do it a lot of times. Like, that's my claim to fame, is I squatted 405 for 27. Not a whole lot of people can say that. I've never been like a 1 rep max type person. People ask me how much I bench now, and I'm like, I knew the most I ever benched was incline 315 for 20. Now I do like sets of 225 for 20, and I'm not, pushing it to the limit to do that. That's just how I try to stay in shape, try to get enough cardiovascular and, lactic acid buildup. And I always train for a pump too. So anyway, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate you being part of the community. And maybe one day I'll lift heavy weights again, but probably not. I'm getting older. I'm trying to be more cognizant of longevity rather than brute force at this point. We got anti-XF. They say, hello. Thank you for sharing the research and education you acquire with the rest of us. What are your thoughts on midterms? We are all aware that one side is anti-crypto. Safe travels. Thank you. I don't think the Dems are anti-crypto. I think that they just need somebody to help educate them. And that's a lot of congressmen and women. This is a unique technology that if you're not doing it every single day, it's hard to really understand. And a lot of what's been educated up to this point is really kind of how things worked all the way up to 2017, 2018, where you had to roll back blockchains and fork stuff and do a bunch of stuff. They don't really understand smart contracts and issued assets and a bunch of other things that would allow markets to operate in the capacity that they really should, and how the regulations and the environment's written for compliance. So I think a lot of it's just education. I also think because it was such a pivotal point in the election, and Trump advocating for it, kind of like they don't want to advocate for it because it's kind of like against Trump. I don't know. It's a weird situation. I don't like having two parties. I wish we had more parties than just two. But when it comes down to it, for midterms, I do think your point, if Dems take control of the House or the Senate, I don't know that we're going to get legislation passed. That doesn't hurt my feelings and my position at all, because XRP already has clarity here in the US, but it definitely holds back the rest of the industry. And I think that there's a lot of other really good projects out there. I think there's a lot of other really good things that have been developed. And for those to just go by the wayside because we can't figure it out, I think is a waste. So, I do think that XRP solves a lot of problems, but I don't think it solves everything. There's a lot of other, like Hyperliquid, right? Like Hype and that chain and that token, awesome for derivatives on chain, or perps on chain, excuse me. You've seen Hidden Road, Ripple Prime partner with them because they're the ones that are doing it. People that get to market first and have a lot of traction and are doing it the right way, we want to continue to advocate for those people. And if those are all held back because we don't get the Clarity Act through, that sucks. And I think everything will settle back to the XRPL. I think it'll be the backbone of everything, but you're still going to need multiple other chains and other applications doing specific tasks that they are better suited for than the XRPL is, right? So anyway, all that being said, I'm hopeful that midterms don't slow down the adoption curve or the legislation, but I am fearful, unfortunately, that may end up being the case. I'm only going to hang out for an hour tonight because we got dinner here with our team in Denver. So I'm going to take probably three or four more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. All right. Truth of Hearts, good to see you. KT baby, what's going on? You posted 48 hours on X referring to tomorrow or April 5th. Tomorrow is also Chinese New Year and the annual solar eclipse. Mind elaborating on 48 days post. I did not realize that it was also the 48th day tomorrow, and that the solar eclipse is tomorrow. I did know that it was Chinese New Year, which is, again, you put your tinfoil hat on for a bunch of stuff. April 5th was in reference to Easter, and then also, Patrick Witt, what he was talking about for the Clarity Act passing. But again, I've said this before, I think that price will happen before the Clarity Act gets passed, not after. And so if Patrick Witt is correct, that really only leaves about 48 if they're going to string it out as long as they can. Well, or as long as he says, right? And they could push it further. Again, if midterms go the other way and they can't vote on it, then this person says how? Well, the ETFs will continue to eat supply off the market in the OTC desk and the dark pools. If there's not enough supply in order to be able to meet demand through those avenues to be able to not affect price, you will see institutional capital flows into the exchanges. And that's where you'll see price start to gap up like we've seen on Upbit and Kraken. Both of those were $90 plus for a very short period of time because of some inflows. So it's not going to take much. Like somebody was telling me that it was Dave Portnoy, deploying $1 million into XRP all at one time on an exchange that pushed the price that high. It's not a sustained volume, right? Like that's going to have to come from institutional flows to hold it there, and then utility of the network to be able to even, exacerbate that and maintain the peg, which I don't think it'll be pegged, but like a price floor is probably a better term for it. We got James. He says, I'm Canadian in Quebec. Should I contact Aaron Grinhaus, LLC or Trust? I'm a newbie, long-term. Jake, you're doing lovely. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And I would absolutely reach out to Aaron and his team out there. Aaron Grinhaus is our partner up there in Canada that helps people structure their assets inside of Canadian entities and stuff in Cayman He has a lot of partnerships there to be able to get stuff offshore. If that's what you want to do, you can talk with him about which of those avenues is better suited for you and your family and your long-term goals. But Aaron at Aaron, Aaron at Grinhos, just like he spelt it here. I'll put it up here for you guys again. Grinhoslaw.ca. So Aaron at Grinhoslaw.ca. And you can schedule a time with him and his team. He has a podcast. He has a bunch of stuff that he's done on tax work. He has an extreme understanding of both U.S. tax law and Canadian tax law when it comes to crypto. It can help you mitigate the taxes and structure it the right way for you and your family. We got Stefan's. What's going on? Thank you, big man. Big question. With as much as we have invested with the big players involved, is there a way they might be able to hoodwink, cheat us as regard to the reverse carry trade and how they would be able to? Your thoughts? No. I mean, I've thought through this. Like before I even put the theory out, I was like, okay, is this sound? Because I don't want to put this out here and look stupid, right? I do enough of that on my own. I don't need the theory to look stupid too. So I've thought through this every way from Sunday. And again, I listen to people smarter than me. I don't claim to be a genius or any of that stuff. I try to find people that are brilliant in their domain or vertical, and then listen to that along with a bunch of other people to come together, pull together my thesis, right? And that's where the domino theory came from. Jim Rickards is who talked about this playing out exactly how it's about to play out for the reverse carry trade and the whole transfer of global dominance for the U.S. dollar into this new system. It was the largest risk, and he worked with the U.S. government to structure the way to be able to mitigate it and still maintain some portion of control, which is what I think XRP is. So, all that being stated, I can't see a way that they can get around it. I think it's the ace in the hole. It's the trump card. It is the inevitable Thanos snap, right? Like it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back on this deal that causes everything to have to move forward. And I really don't, there's not another solution to be able to provide liquidity in that circumstance to move to real-time settlement and de-risk all those positions and all those unrealized losses and all the other stuff that's going to ensue. If the other option is go into a global depression or Mad Max scenario, they're not going to do that. We got Garveld. They say, if risk-adverse banks can safely settle trillions instantly through Ripple's RLUSD, seems they have less financial incentive to touch XRP. Thoughts? Also related, SSJ 256 is still completely secure. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think quantum will absolutely change the security around that encryption. On RLUSD, that's a good point you make, but there's counterparty risk, and Ripple is the counterparty risk. And they're going to be wanting to fund Ripple when they could be funding themselves. So they're going to issue their own stable coins. They're not going to funnel trillions of dollars into Ripple's treasury to be able to use their token. Why would they do that when they can back their own stable coin and earn the yield off the treasuries? So there needs to be something that allows for interoperability between RLUSD and a Bank of America stablecoin and JPM coin and Citicoin and all these other coins for their own internal infrastructure that needs to be able to settle with a counterparty, because none of these counterparties want to hold the other counterparties stablecoin. They don't want to redeem that asset. And they don't want to benefit another company when they could be benefiting themselves. So you have to have a neutral bridge that they all trust and verify and is a DEX that allows all those to swap. Otherwise, you're just going to exacerbate the Nostro Vostro accounts. So Ripple will do very well. I'm not saying RLUSD won't do it for them as a product, but other large banks and institutions aren't going to want to fund Ripple's business when they can fund themselves, right? So that would be my argument there. And I'm very confident in that after attending multiple conferences with BlackRock and State Street and all of the other large players that are out there that are leaning in. We'll take two more and then we'll wrap it. We got Cheyenne. She says, hey, Jake, if I bought assets after LLC was done, do I need an addendum? Thank you to you and the tea lady. No, it'd just be if you bought them with the bank account associated with the LLC, no problem, they're in there. If you bought them in your personal name and then you transfer them to the wallet associated with the LLC, you just need a written action or written consent. And as long as you did the LLC with us, you're going to be able to keep a record of those, keep them on a spreadsheet, write them down, however you want to do it. And then you'll file that with your corporate veil service with Laughlin. And then last but not least, we got Q Parks. They say, do I need $1,000 to onboard my crypto into Anchorage? Do I need $1,000 to okay. So it's only $900. And again, you don't have to fund your account right away. So if you don't want to pay AUM fees, but you want to be proactive and you want to get stuff, go ahead and get through KYC, KYB and set everything up because you know the yield product's coming. We are onboarding people right now. If you have an LLC, if you already have an entity, you can use the code onboard 100 and it gets you $100 off over there at Digital Wealth Partners to go ahead and onboard. So you can go to do.net, go to the contact us form, and you'll be good to go. We'd love to work with you. The minimum over there is 50,000 XRP. So you need at least 50,000 XRP, but if you don't want to pay the AUM fees yet, because, you know, you're waiting on the yield product to be able to cover those, I think that's going to happen in the near future. That's what we're betting on, and that's why we're willing to do this. You would have to fund at some point this year, right? Like, so before the end of the year. But if you want to go ahead and be proactive, we would love to work with you. You just go over to digitalwealthpartners.net and use the code onboard100, get you $100 off. So it's only $900 for the onboarding over there. If you need the LLC, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF50 OFFDAG LLC. That's 50 OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end for the LLC to be able to manage your digital assets. Again, $50,000 to $80,000 total in your total portfolio is kind of where we see people starting to look at that and set that thing up. If you need a trust, if you want a revocable trust in your state, along with the assignment of the assets in the LLC to it to be able to get probate protection, you can use the code webinar trust, all capitalized, for $200 off at checkout for that. And you should be good to go. Right? Like if you've done all those things, you've set up the bank accounts, you're really well positioned to be able to take full advantage of the price appreciation as we see things play out there in the Middle East and all of the dominoes unfold for XRP to be a much higher price. And if you want to listen to more of that stuff, you want to understand what's going on, you want more of the gold nuggets that I get to hear in the background from the conversations we have. I share a lot of that there in the Mastermind. You can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke. All capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. And I am going to wrap it a little early tonight. Again, we do have dinner with our team here in Denver at ETH Denver. We're going to be speaking. Love to see you guys at Community Night on Thursday. So yeah, hope you all have a wonderful week, a wonderful evening. We'll see you on the next one.